So good morning everyone again. And this morning I'd like to continue with our process of serenity and insight. Here the serenity meditations are involved with the 4 boundless divine abodes. And the insights today will be borrowing from another sutta. We'll be borrowing from the Anapanasati Sutta. The insight component of this will be borrowing from the Anapanasati Sutta, which is the sutta or the discourse on mindfulness of breathing. In fact, there's 16 steps of mindfulness of breathing. So the serenity component, as I mentioned, will enable us to kind of center, stabilize our attention, and develop a concentrated mind in order that we can then steer it towards looking at experience or observing experience or being mindful of experience, noticing experience, or more than noticing it, more like inquiring into experience and seeing the way it actually is. So, I'll be talking this morning, I'll give a little bit of a talk about this serenity and insight component again, and also give you, I'll talk about equanimity first as a divine abode, and then I'll talk about the 4th establishment of mindfulness called mindfulness of phenomena. In Pali it's called dhammas, and I'll talk a little bit more about that word in a minute. So first of all, let's look at this equanimity as a divine abode. And last night we heard about, I gave you a discourse. I shared with you some information and understanding about equanimity, because equanimity can be nourished or can be cultivated from living a healthy lifestyle, living an ethical lifestyle. Just living ethically can help us wake up to equanimity. We begin to see the way things are and live accordingly. And equanimity can also be developed with mindfulness and reflections, contemplations, and I mentioned the 5 recollections as one way of working with developing equanimity. In particular, when we talk about that 5th recollection, often that's used to cultivate equanimity. I'm the owner of my actions, heir to my actions, born of my actions, relate to my actions, abide supported by my actions, whatever actions I shall do. Of those actions, I shall be the heir. We are what we have done, we will be what we do. It's interesting. And last night, we left off with a discussion, and I hope Ali doesn't mind me talking about this right now. But we left off with a discussion and we came to the conclusion about choiceless choice, which is a paradox. And I think the reason why Ali brought that up, and she can correct me if I'm wrong, it was about how we cultivate compassion. Because when we can see that people are the results of causes and conditions, that we have all sorts of experience coming our way, many of which we don't want. And we respond to those causes and conditions in particular ways, sometimes completely out of our control. So it's to understand this interconnection, this interdependence, that we can't blame people for the way they are. The way we are is not our fault, and I'm just repeating what Paul Gilbert says. The way we are is not our fault. What's happening to us is not our fault, but it is our responsibility, meaning that we can work with it. We can act. Whether we call that action a choice or not, it's another story. But the point that I want to make here is that we can make a change. We can change the way things are going for us. We can make intentions, because that's in line with the Eightfold Path. Sometimes intentions are called right thought. We can think sometimes we can't choose the way we think, but what we ponder and think about a lot, that becomes the inclination of our mind. And when we can have a tendency to go this way rather than that, that develops into a character trait and a trait, basically. It's like this gradual development, this cultivation. That's what meditation is about. So there's a story in the Buddha's time about a person called Angulimala. Angulimala was a philosopher, and he went to philosopher's school, and he had this, somehow he wanted to prove his point, and he decided to do what one of the philosophy teachers were telling him. Against his good judgment, he just went and did it. And he went on his way to collect 1,000 little fingers of people he had killed and put it on a mala as a bead. It's like Anguli Mala, his name was Anguli, it's the mala of Anguli. So he was killing people all over the place. You know, people were getting really frightened of him. And then one day the Buddha was looking across the universe with his divine eye. In other words, he was checking out where people are at, because he had that power. And he could see that Angulimala's mother was found out he was in the area, and she was about to visit him and offer him some lunch, offer him some food, because he was, living in the forest and all the rest of it. So the Buddha could see this, and he could see that if he killed his mother, he would go to that would be pretty bad karma, which would end up him being in hell for a while. And there's all sorts of realms in Buddhist cosmology. Hell is one of them. So anyway, he could see this, but he could also see that Angulimala had the potential. And it was the last finger that he had to get. It was the last person. He'd killed and murdered 999 people. This is how the story goes. Whether it's accurate is another story. So what the Buddha did was he went out and he walked, and he knew where Angulimala was, and he walked by him, and Angulimala saw the Buddha, and he thought, oh, there's someone I can kill. And as he was walking, Angulimala started to chase him. And the Buddha didn't do anything. He just stopped. But no matter how much Angulimala tried to run to catch him, he couldn't catch him. He couldn't catch him. The Buddha had done one of his supernormal powers, like he'd made it so that even though the Buddha was standing still, Angulimala couldn't catch him. And so Angulimala yelled out to him, "Why can't I catch you?" And the Buddha just turned around and said, "I've stopped, why haven't you? I've stopped, why haven't you?" And this was like this with Angulimala's mind. He realised, he had a moment of awakening. He realised that he was perpetuating his cycle in samsara because of his actions. And he went to his knees and he went to the Buddha and said, "Please take me as your student, please. I'm so grateful. Thank you." And Angulimala went on to ordain, and then it's said that whenever he went pintapat, whenever he went for alms around, he would have stones thrown at him, and he'd always come back bloodied from the walk, just to get food. It'd always be someone would come out and hit him or whatever. The reason I'm telling you this is that no matter what we've done in the past, whether we've had affairs or not, like myself, we have the opportunity to transform the outcomes of that. Just because Angulimala killed 999 people, it didn't mean that someone was going to go and kill him. And he went on to become a great disciple of the Buddha and an enlightened one. And there's another story about him helping women with childbirth. I can't remember the exact story. But I'm telling you this story because I don't want you to think, oh, I've had so much bad karma, I'm going to I'm going to receive terrible things happening to me. And this is it about the choiceless choice. We have the choice to transform. We have the choice to go down a different trajectory. Hope you don't mind me going on with that little Dharma story. So I'll come back to equanimity now. So equanimity is, as I mentioned last night, a practice in and of itself, as well as the result of practice. And a practice in and of itself is cultivation of equanimity as a divine abode. And as I didn't mention it fully last night, but the relationship aspect of the equanimity, as in all the divine abodes, is related to its near and far enemies, which I mentioned last night. Near and far enemies, the far enemies, of course, are this overreactivity to people, places and things, the taking everything personally, feeling responsible for other people's actions, feeling to blame for everything. I've noticed this with a lot of people I see, and also people on retreats come along and say they feel really terrible about what other people, the way other people are. And so the cultivation of equanimity helps us realise that everyone is on their own life trajectories and we can't change another. And also we don't need to feel responsible for their thoughts, feelings and behaviours. So in terms of the relationship aspect, I also mentioned the near enemies being this cold, aloof, detached, dissociation, cut-offness. And it's a lack of sort of engagement. In terms of the relationship aspect, with equanimity, what happens is that we have a kind of transcendence of discrimination. In other words, we see beings equally deserving of warm benevolence and compassion. We are not swayed by attraction or aversion. We're stable and in the middle. And so that's the important point about this relationship aspect. So now coming to the meditation. The meditation, there's a range of ways you can do it. The ways I do it is somehow bring to mind a reminder of equanimity. So I can rouse the sign of equanimity in my heart. And this could be a felt sense of the sign, or it could be a cognition or a phrase or something that is kind of puts you back in that space. Sometimes I do this by just saying the words, things are the way they are, or may I be peaceful with the way things are. This is the reality of things. Sometimes I even say the serenity prayer to myself. Sometimes that's one way it can work. Other ways it can work, as you heard last night, is by reflecting on someone we know that emanates and reflects this perfect equanimity. And I think of some political leaders, like Mahatma Gandhi. We think of someone like that, or Nelson Mandela, someone like that. So we can reflect on these beings, and I think I talked to you last night of how I used to just reflect on my teacher, my Achan Ben, his name was, in Thailand, so strong and stable and centered, or some of the other Achans that I met, and my preceptor, for example, who lived in Bangkok, he was so steady, and he could switch to metta and compassion just like this. It was so beautiful to be around these people. They're so strong and powerful. I could feel into that. Another way that I cultivate equanimity is I find that still and stable space in my heart. But it actually drops down from my heart and I go into the earth. I become the earth. I become like a mountain. And I go right to the core of the earth and I feel that core and that stability in the earth, and it's quiet and still. And all the other stuff's kind of sort of prattling off on the surface, but it just kind of fades away. And I'm just this stillness. And from that space, one can have a lot of understanding, this peacefulness, this stillness, this quietude. Whatever way you can rouse it, you rouse it. And then you make it the object of your serenity meditation practice. And with serenity meditation, the whole idea is to absorb into it. Like, remember the HEAL of heal? You have this experience, you got it, you enrich it, you're enriching it by thinking about it, remembering a time where you're peaceful, or seeing, having this kind of peaceful understanding of something, this wise perspective of something, this wise stepping back and seeing something. And then you find this sign, this like, with ordinary experience, there's a sign of it, and then you hone in on that. You have initial application, sustained application, and you let it go with the flow. Like there'll be a sort of a joy arise, or piti will arise, and there'll be happiness. Yet the focus is on equanimity, this piece of equanimity, and it kind of transcends that then. Then there's unification of attention, unification of mind, you absorb into it. So the H, having experience, E, enriching it, A, absorbing into it. And then that's enough. What might happen is that other things might come up, like distractions or whatever you want to call them, or memories of the past where you may have been shaken around. And that's where we apply the linking. And the linking here is what I correlate with insight. It's like this suffering meets equanimity. And in that meeting, the suffering is transformed. If that's another way of describing it. The other day I described it like putting a tablespoon of salt in a pristine lake. So I'll invite you to rouse it, then I invite you to embody it. That may be meaningful for some of you. Other ways you can have that sense of absorption is to have a cognition, perhaps, have a thought, like a phrase, things things are just the way they are. This is the reality of this. This is the reality of this. Even if I wanted to change it, I can't change it. This is the way it is. And absorb into that cognition. It becomes like a mantra. You can do it like that. Then, if you can feel this sense of boundlessness like this, what I described the other day as impermanence, this sense of spaciousness, you drop into that, or you let it be, you let it kind of expand, and it goes boundlessly, and that then is this abiding in this boundless divine abode. Well, I've repeated abode twice there, but that is this boundless divine abiding. And whatever beings there are in this kind of boundless space, they also become equanimity, become filled with equanimity. In this boundless space, sometimes beings are just our projection of beings. They feel like they're just our thoughts, but nonetheless, there's this boundlessness, there's this connection. Okay, so that's the equanimity component. And foundation of the fourth establishment of mindfulness is about, it's called Dhammanupassana Satipatthana in Pali. I'll just translate that. Dhammas, there's two meanings for the word Dhamma, or there's a few meanings actually, but one meaning I like to think of it as a little d meaning, and it means a unit of experience, the experience of something, not something, but the experience of something, a unit of experiencing. So we have Dhammas all the time, my experiencing seeing this mic is a Dhamma, if that makes sense. So that's one way we can understand it. It means phenomena in that respect. Phenomena or mental objects. Another way we can understand it is as the Dhamma, or the Buddha Dhamma, or Buddha Dhamma, and it's the truth of the way things are. We each and every one of us have our own Dhammas. Like, I have Malcolm Dhamma. And there's a truth of the way things are. And normally when we talk about Dhammas here, it's the truth of the way things are in life. Like they're dependently arising, there's streams of dependently arising processes interacting. And this particular domain, or this particular foundation, looks at these phenomena in a way much as if they were kind of looking at them in a way that aligns with Dhamma, the truth of the way things are. So we have 5 subdomains in this particular foundation, and 2 of these subdomains are, well, we've talked about quite a bit, or you would have maybe heard about them on the recordings that were sent to you. First domain is, the first one is mindfulness of the hindrances, and in this case, we're being attentive to the hindrances, and we're not engaging with them, but we're seeing them for what they are, and we have some intelligence about them. There's some intelligence about them. We're working in a way where we attenuate their impact on us, or their influence over us. Another foundation is, another subdomain is the 7 factors of awakening. Here again, we're knowing that they've arisen, and we're knowing how to maintain them, keep them going. Everything's impermanent, but it's really good to cultivate these qualities. So that's another domain. Another domain is called the 6 sense spheres, which is sight, sound, smell, touch, taste, and mind, like just being present with the 6 sense spheres, or mindfulness of that. And there's some meditations that we can do about that, but not on this retreat. Another domain is, it's about noticing what's called 5 khanda in Pali, skanda in Sanskrit, and these translates as clusters of experience, or aggregates. They're called the 5 aggregates. 5 aggregates relate to form, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness, which one could consider is what we call ourselves, the self. The self is made up of body, form. Self is also made up of feelings, like hedonic qualities of experience, alcoholic tones of experience. It's also made up of perceptions, the way we recognize something. It's also made up of mental formations. And these last 4 are of mind. Mental formations, which are mental fabrications, creations. And it's also made up of consciousness. Consciousness here means the knowing of experience. So what we do with this particular subdomain, is we're aware of these aggregates and we release clinging to them. So there's an insight there. And the last, have I gone through 4? The last one, which is really interesting, because it's like we begin at mindfulness of body with, when do we begin? I think it begins with bones, skin and flesh, just the basics of the body. And it gets more and more refined. It's more refined with Vedana, or feelings. It gets more refined with the mindfulness of heart-mind, or tracking heart-mind, mind, which is the 3rd application. And then the 4th application is this mindfulness of phenomena. And in that, it gets more and more refined, up until the last one, which is, it's a tracking and a being mindful of the 4 truths, the 4 noble truths and ennobling truths. And this is really interesting. It's because what we have with the 4 truths, which we heard about in the first Dharma talk, is we have we have suffering and the cause of suffering. We have freedom from suffering and the cause of freedom from suffering. Two cause-effect relationships. And these cause-effect relationships reflect that statement that I've made about dependent arising. When there is, when this is, that is. When there is craving, there is dukkha. When this is not, with the arising of this, that arises. When we have craving, suffering arises. When this is not, that is not. With the ceasing of this, that ceases. When there's no craving, there's no suffering. When there's no craving and grasping and clinging, no becoming, no birth, aging, sickness, death, and so on. So this is a reflection of that. So when we come to the exercise that Ali will lead us in, will invite us to practice, it's practicing the last tetrad of 16 steps of mindfulness of breathing. And the last tetrad, as I mentioned last night, there's 4 tetrads, 4 sets of 4, and these 4 sets of 4s correlate with the 4 establishments of mindfulness. The first tetrad correlates with mindfulness of body, second tetrad correlates with mindfulness of feeling, the third tetrad correlates with, I'm trying to do my fingers here, correlates with mindfulness of mind, and the fourth tetrad correlates with mindfulness of phenomena. And what I think it correlates most particularly with, this last tetrad, it correlates mostly with that last domain, the domain of this seeing causes for suffering and letting the causes go. So as far as, and Ali will probably go further onto this, what we have with that last, the steps in the last tetrad is perception of impermanence, then I would call it equanimity or dispassion. Dispassion meaning we're cooling, craving for or pushing away. Then we have cessation, and then we have letting go. So I think Ali can talk more on that right now, if that's all right.
Yeah, just before I start. So good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Yeah. So this morning we're going to begin the insight part of this instruction period with a contemplation of change, or anicca in Pali. So, as Mal said, this is a way of practicing the fourth foundation of mindfulness, mindfulness of dharmas, or in this case, it's mindfulness of the truth of things, or the way things are. In our guided meditation, we will progress quite naturally from the contemplation of change to the contemplations of fading away, cessation, and letting go. These are the 4 sections of the last tetrad of the Anapanasati Sutta that Mal mentioned. So we'll be contemplating impermanence, fading away, cessation, and letting go. During the meditation, I will speak a little about each of these in turn as we move through the meditation, and I will ring a soft bell at the end of each contemplation. Contemplation of impermanence, fading away, cessation, and letting go. Then at the end, I'll ring 3 bells. This meditation will flow seamlessly on from Mal's meditation about equanimity. So it'll be one meditation, beginning with Mal and then finishing with me. So, Lisa and I have been very fortunate to have been on a retreat in Bali led by Dharma teachers Angela McGee and Will James. We didn't attend together, but we've both been. We haven't been together, have we? No, we've both been. So these retreats are very beautiful for many reasons, not least of which being the yatra walked together on one of the days. This silent walk from the retreat centre in the village goes further up the Mount Batu Karu, majestic mountain, beginning in rice paddies and ending in jungle. At the top, or nearly at the top, there's an open-air temple which we walk to. This temple is saturated with the rich, earth-based spirituality of the Balinese people. This place within which they practice their spirituality with deep, ancient ritual, ceremony and prayer. Within the temple complex, which has no walls and no ceiling, but there are 3 towering ancient carved stone pillars, weathered and moss covered, one for each of the 3 Hindu gods, Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva. Brahma the creator, Vishnu the sustainer, and Shiva the destroyer. This is ancient wisdom illustrating the arising, coming into being, and passing away of all phenomena. This natural law of life, the universe, and everything, explored and seen into by yogis, swamis, sadhus, and mystics throughout time, and also by the Buddha. Dharma practice invites us to see directly, in the moment, and for ourselves this truth of change. The seeing of this being a doorway to awakening. This is to be realized, not as a concept, an idea or a theory, but experientially in this fathom-long body and mind. Moment by moment, here and now. This will lead to a radical reshaping of how we understand reality. Meditation practice gives us this precious opportunity to see for ourselves directly the flow of changing experience through the senses, ceaselessly becoming otherwise. To see this to any degree at all, however small, is an inclination towards freedom. With practice, the perception of change can become so refined that the rapidity of the change perceived is such that what is perceived is already dissolving. This hints of nothing really being there at all, and that experience is mostly empty. This is what is called the Dharma vision. This is the development of the establishment of mindfulness such that the experience of impermanence itself becomes more predominant and is of more interest to the meditator than the perceived objects themselves. This is the move from mindfulness of objects to mindfulness of process. And this is what the teachings are inviting us to do. So today we will be exploring together this in our guided meditation. As I said, we will begin with Mal's equanimity meditation and move seamlessly through to impermanence, fading away, cessation and letting go, with a soft bell in between impermanence contemplation, fading away contemplation, cessation contemplation, and letting go contemplation. 3 bells at the end. Over to you.